This is a JT's Horror Discussions PSA. Hi, I'm JT. So, the 3 year anniversary of the channel is in 4 days or so. So, this is the 3 year anniversary episode, and I just want to, as always, thank every single person who has ever watched a video, who's ever liked a video, anyone who has subscribed, obviously, anyone who has shared a video, everybody who's ever supported the channel anyway. So it's amazing that it's 3 years already. I can't fucking believe it's been 3 years I'm doing this shit. Man, what am I doing with my time? But thank you as always, and enjoy the 3 year anniversary episode on Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. Alright, boils and ghouls. So, change of plans. Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 from 2000, directed by Joe Berlinger. This is such a misunderstood movie, and many of you know I adore this film, and I don't really care for the first film. I don't like the Blair Witch Project much. I can't watch it. It's just really boring to me. I do love everything else about that film. The marketing was brilliant. The whole idea of using the internet and saying this was real and the police reports. So that's something that you'll never really see again. I mean, they were able to use the internet in its infancy. It was really getting popular to promote their movie, and still one of the most successful independent films of all time. Then you have the lore, which I love all of it, with Rustin Parr's story and everything about Ellie Kedward and the Coffin Rock Massacre. All of that's great. So I love everything about the Blair Witch Project. I just don't love watching it. I just think it's a boring film. So I did a video on this very, very early on in the channel, as well as the Blair Witch Project and Blair Witch from, what is it, 2016, I think? Our sponsor for this episode is my buddy Ginger Ninja. I was having a conversation with him, and we were talking about, like, older videos and how we wish we can redo some of them. Then I came across Book of Shadows while scrolling. It's been forever since I talked about this movie. Let's do a Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 revisited video, because yeah, this movie's in my top 40 films of all time. That's how much I love this film. I've seen it so many times, and when I did my initial video on it, it was on a fan edit that's very close to what would be a director's cut if we finally fucking got one. I don't know if we'll ever get one. The fan edit is the closest I think that we'll ever get, unless by some miracle of God or the universe we do get one from Berlinger. But I was watching the fan edit for that review, and that's usually what I watch when I watch this movie. But it's on Prime, so this is the first time I'm watching the theatrical release in a decent bit, which we know was a train wreck, and they really fucked over Berlinger bad with his vision here, and that's why this movie is so misunderstood. That's why it got so much hate initially. It's been getting a lot more love over the years, which is something I love to see. I mean, there are a few of us in this community that really do love this movie. I have a few friends who are big fans of this film and always have been. Same with me. I've always loved this film since it first came out. Didn't like the first one since it first came out, and I was young. I was 10 years old maybe or so. Yeah, 10, 11. I never liked the original Blair Witch. I grew to appreciate it more as my life went on, but aforementioned thoughts on it, that's just how I feel about it. This movie I loved since I first saw it. Despite all the stuff the studio forced him to shoot in his backyard and all the murder footage, and they put it so early on into this movie. The same with the police questioning of the three survivors. Everything is put in so early that it immediately gives away the fact that these people murdered the tourists and the tour guides. in the woods at Coffin Rock. And it gives all of that away from, I mean, I'd even argue it gives it away when they show the stupid scenes with Jeff in the hospital. I'd argue from that beginning of the movie, that's like in the first scene, when they show Jeff. Right from there, people start thinking, all right, this guy's nuts, and they start suspecting him. And then 10, 15 minutes after that, you already see one of them being questioned by the sheriff, Sheriff Craven, which, nice little homage there. So there's so much stuff that the studios forced Berlinger to put into this film. But let's watch and talk Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 from 2000, revisited. So we open up with the text, which says the following is a fictionalized reenactment of events that occurred after the release of the Blair Witch Project. We're not seeing what actually happened, like, in the context of a film. We're seeing this as a reenactment of these twisted events that happened by these Blair Witch Project fans a year or so after the release of the film. It is based on public records, local Maryland TV broadcasts, and hundreds of hours of taped interviews. To protect the privacy of certain individuals, some names have been changed. Which I like how all the characters in this movie have the same names as the actors that played them, just different last names. I love every character in this movie. Every single character. Jeff, Erica, I mean, oh god, I love Erica so much. Kim Director too, I mean, she's so sexy in this also, even though Erica is, that's my girl right there. And then Steven and Tristan, even though there is some overacting here and there, there's maybe like 2 or 3 lines, mostly from Kim and from Jeff, that I always kind of roll my eyes, but besides that, I think they all do a great job in this. So then we open up with the whole montage of news broadcasts and people talking about the Blair Witch Project and how terrifying it was, and just how this movie blew up and how big it got and how much money it made and how successful it was. And then we see the residents of Burkittsville, Maryland, some who, embrace that their town is known for the movie, and some that think that it was a mistake and it really took a toll on the town, and now there's people swarming Burkittsville and wandering around the woods, and probably even had ghost hunters, and it's affecting some of the people in this town, some negatively, and like I said, some in a positive way. I mean, Jeff is making some decent money off of this. Then they showed the stupid scene with Jeff in the mental hospital. Now, I don't remember exactly from Berlinger's notes, which are what are translated to the fan edit, how much of his backstory is in it. I think some of him in the mental hospital is in, like, the original version and his vision, but I'm not sure how much of it is. I think in the fan edit they still have that scene with him in the hospital. So even if that was Berlinger's initial vision, that's something I still don't care for much. Then we get the opening credits with Marilyn Manson's Disposable Teens, which I like some of Manson's songs when they were coming out over the years. I don't really know any of his later stuff, but his first 3 albums, especially Mechanical Animals, that's a good one. Very good music. It works for all the other heavy metal music in the soundtrack for this film, which there is a lot of good music in this. There's a System of a Down song, Mind, I think off their debut album. There's a lot of good songs on this soundtrack. But it was supposed to be Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft, and in the fan edit they replaced it with Witchcraft instead of Disposable Teens. It does feel a lot better. Like, it just sets a totally different mood than Disposable Teens by Marilyn Manson. Right after that scene, they have Sheriff Craven come in and start interrogating Jeff. In the fan edit, it's not there. They skip right past this. And that's how it originally should have been. It goes right to Jeff driving the Blair Witch Hunt van with Tristan and Oh, I'm gonna get fucking confused with Steven and Tristan. I always, for some reason, forget either Tristan or Steven's name when I'm trying to recall all five of them. I don't know why, but Steven and Tristan, who are boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're writing the book on the Blair Witch Project. And whether it's history or hysteria, and Steven is the one who doesn't really believe in all of this, that it's just myths and legends, and a lot of it is mass delusion and mass hysteria. And all of that is grounded in reality, but obviously not in the reality of this film because there is actual supernatural paranormal stuff. But Tristan is the one who more believes in it and thinks there's truth in all of these mysteries and these myths and all these urban legends. They're rooted in truth in some way. So I like that whole little dynamic, and I like their whole little relationship. Then we have Erica, who's just, I mean, you see her body, when they're killing the people, the tourists, it is stupid. I always say she is so sexy. Erica Learson, I don't know what happened to her. I even tried looking her up to try to contact her, to try to get her on the channel. There's no contact info for her. She did this movie. She did Texas Chainsaw Massacre '03, the remake, which is excellent. And then she was in Wrong Turn 2, which I always forget that she was in that. And a few other things, and that was it. She disappeared. I mean, I really wish that we would see Erica Learson some more because I really liked her both as an actress, and I had a huge crush on her, obviously, back then. And still, she's gorgeous. And Kim Director, too. I mean, none of these actors and actresses we ever really saw again. But Kim Director, I think, was very good in this, despite overacting a bit here and there. And she was gorgeous, too. And then we never saw her again. They pick her up in the graveyard, and she just wants to get fucking drunk. She's been driving for like 2 days. And then they stop at the gas station. Well, it's not a gas station. It's like a little shit convenience store in this town right outside of Burkittsville because Jeff won't even take a piss in Burkittsville. So they're in the store, and I love the little subtle fact that there's the guy on the ground working on the refrigerated unit, and then they start talking about Rustin Parr, who murdered the 7 kids. And his line when he came back into town was, "I'm all finished now," or "I'm finished now." And later on in the film, much later, when Kim goes to this store to get beer and she kills Peggy, you see the same guy still working on the machine. And he says, "I'm finished now." That's subtle. Having him there early on here at the beginning of the movie, I've always liked that. And the fact that they start talking about Rustin Parr right when he's there, when they're right next to him on the ground. And then see, this is where you get the studio bullshit spliced in here, where it's not needed at all in any way, shape, or form. When they're driving in the van to the Rustin Parr ruins, that took a bit. Kim says that she hears voices all the time when they're saying that Rustin Parr heard voices of the witch to kill the 7 kids. Then you see a quick scene of someone being smashed with a rock on the side of their head and being murdered. None of that had to be put into the beginning, middle, or any part of this film, and those are the scenes that Berlinger filmed in his backyard. I love the look of the Parr ruins, and Jeff makes a great point. And I love the whole tree thing, too. How later on, when they see the tree, it's just like a small twig. But when they're here in person, it's this big-ass tree. And Jeff makes an excellent point. Why would a house built in 1820-something, he says, 1826, be built around a big tree? It would be jetting out through the living room. And it's a good point. And how come none of them notice this or think it's of more concern or looking into? Don't they have a bunch of photos of this place? Especially Tristan and Stephen. They're writing the book. They've never seen a picture of the Parr ruins to know that there's not supposed to be a big ass tree that's coming out of the place. I mean, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but I like that it adds to the whole surrealness of this movie. This movie's a complete head trip, and it was supposed to, I should say, unravel like a psychological thriller. And that's exactly what it feels like, despite the studio interference and everything. It still is more of a psychological horror film than the first movie, and that's why this was such a risky sequel, and that's why it was so hated, is because it wasn't like the first movie. It wasn't the same. And that's what happens with a lot of sequels. You can't please everybody. You can't please the majority nowadays, especially. But if you have a movie that was as big as the Blair Witch Project, and it's in the found footage style, and pretty much kickstarted that entire subgenre. We had others, that's a whole other topic. But you take a film that influential and that big, and you have a sequel for it fast tracked for the next year, and it's this different. It's not the same thing. They took a risk here. And for me, it paid off completely. But for the majority, it did not. It was not the same thing of having people in the woods with a shaky camera with found footage style. It's something completely different, even though it is about the Blair Witch Project in every single way. The best video on this on YouTube is the Good Bad Flicks video, which anybody who loves this movie has watched that video. And he goes all into the DVD extras with the S-Rever, everything in reverse, and all the little stuff that they added for the DVD release. Go check that video out if you haven't seen it. Good Bad Flicks. But I love the whole scene of them partying here, and then the creepy owl that Kim sees, and great soundtrack. But the whole film is about the Blair Witch and the Blair Witch Project. It's just not in the same format, one, and it's just a totally different film than the original, and that's why it was so disliked. But I'm happy to see, as I said, it get more love over the years, because it really does deserve it. This is such a fun movie. I mean, you have Rustin Parr mentioned throughout this, and they're at the Parr ruins. You have Ellie Kedward mentioned at length. Coffin Rock, the massacre. The tourists here are killed and put in the shape of a pentagram, just like the Coffin Rock massacre. The whole movie is basically a commentary on how big the first movie was, and how, life can imitate art, and how the hysteria over the first movie and the crazed fans, it led to more murder here. There's a lot of meta elements to this movie, and I think all of it works very, very well. We have a lot of cameras here, so even though it's not found footage, there's still a lot of emphasis on film and recording and video. I mean, Jeff is obsessed with cameras, but then he also says the line, and it comes into play at the end. That video never lies. Film does, though. So there's a whole bunch of meta stuff to this movie. The whole film is about the Blair Witch Project, so I'll never understand people who said that this movie has nothing to do with the first movie. So they're at the Parr ruins, and Erica is a Wiccan, and she's talking about widdershins and reversing the evil, which that comes into play later too, and has to do with all the reverse stuff and the S-Rever bonus stuff in the DVD release. Kim she says, is a psychic. She can see things, and it seems like she really is, because she does find the tapes. In her mind, she sees them. That's the line that really she overacts, and she doesn't deliver that well at all. In my mind, I see them. That's literally how she says it.
Where? Do you see them?
In my mind, I see them.
There's so much great stuff in all the scenes of them getting increasingly more drunk and stoned and fucked up until they black out. The tourists show up, and then Jeff says, your balls will fall off in 3 days. That's a great line. And they argue over, having this spot for the night. Then the tourists and the other tour, the Blair Witch Walk, That's the name. They were supposed to camp here and ends up that they're here, so they have to give it up for the night and go somewhere else. And then they end up going and killing all of them. But they don't remember that until they see the video later. All the music, yeah, on the soundtrack is great, and it is mined by System of a Down. That plays during this whole sequence while they're partying, and then you get Queens of the Stone Age. It's a lot of that type of new metal / alternative rock from the late 90s. Nicotine, Valium, Vicodin, marijuana. But then again, you see footage of the tourists being killed, what they're about to do, that Kim sees. So, I mean, I guess that it's a vision, because she does say they're not coming back. And when she's asked by Steven, how do you know that? She says, I just do. So she feels something. And then Tristan has her dream where she drowns the baby in the lake, and then she wakes up and she has the miscarriage, and they bring her to the hospital. And then she sees the creepy, what's her name, Eileen Treagle? It's definitely Treagle. I'm not sure about Eileen, but I'm pretty positive. She sees her walk backwards in the hospital for a second. That's a cool little creepy image. And they wake up and see that everything is destroyed. Steven and Tristan's book is shredded beyond belief. I mean, it looks like it's snowing. That's how much paper is still flying around the next morning. It doesn't matter. It looks awesome. All of Jeff's cameras are annihilated. Kim even says it looks like they were bit off, like it was an animal or something, is what she implies. Which, speaking of animals, we have the owl that I said way back when this all started, that Kim sees before she passes out. You see that same owl later crash through Jeff's place, through the window, right before shit really starts getting crazy. So I wonder if that owl is supposed to represent anything, or it's just, maybe like a bad omen, or even just a hallucination maybe, or manipulation of her mind by the witch, or because we don't know exactly what happened here, except for that Tristan gets taken over by Ellie Kedward, by the Blair Witch. Besides that, we don't really have any rules on how all of this works, but they all start seeing things at some point, because they eventually think at the end that everything unfolded completely differently than how it actually did. So the witch can obviously mess with your mind and make you see things and even experience things that didn't happen in any way, shape, or form. That's where the psychological horror aspect comes into this movie. So Kim ends up finding the tapes in her mind, and then it's right where the Blair Witch tapes were found. And they end up digging them up, and then they end up arguing and going to Jeff's place that he purchased for $1 before they were going to tear it down. He sells a bunch of stuff on eBay, stolen shit. He thinks of it as just like he's a Robin Hood in some way. He has his whole Blair Witch store. I mean, he's really capitalizing on the success of the film. And then they start looking through all the footage to try to figure out what happened when they blacked out for those several hours. I love Erica's line when Jeff is showing where all the bedrooms are when they arrive at his loft after he shows off his whole Blair Witch store. She goes up to him and says, I appreciate the hospitality, but please take me off your mailing list. That's great. And it made me think, I mean, the younger generation now, do they even know what a mailing list is? Are there still mailing lists? I mean, magazines are really fading out, so I don't even know. It made me think of it, though. And then Kim comes up to him and says, they never should have let you out. You're a long way from sane. This is in the fan edit. So I'm pretty sure this was supposed to be in Berlinger's vision of the movie. Like I said, I can't remember if the hospital scene is. I'm pretty sure it is, though. So his backstory of being, hospitalized was definitely in Berlinger's initial vision for this. Also, it's cool that you have like a Breakfast Club cast here. They all represent something. Erica is a witch. So she represents the Wiccan community as a whole. Then you have Stephen and Tristan, who are the like mythbusters and historians. And then you have Kim, who just liked the movie. Like she said earlier, I thought the movie was cool. And then you have Jeff, who is capitalizing off of all of this. So all of that is represented well too. I don't know how many people picked up on that initially. See, I like this little detail when they're in the editing loft and they're watching the video and Kim sees the flash on the tape that they're watching, and soon we'll find out that it's Erica naked swinging around the tree, and again her body, it's stupid looking. But then you hear Tristan call Steven, and it's not just him who hears this. Kim also hears it because he gets up and she says, hey, is she going to be okay? And he says, I don't know. Then he walks into the room and she's fast asleep. So it's not just him who hears this. They all heard Tristan call for Steven. Erica's freaking out and she's doing her incantation and like swaying back and forth. Kim comes in and says to come to the store with her. And then she says, we brought something back with us. Shows the markings on her body, and Kim has it too, and they think it's just poison oak. All of that's great. Then when they see Erica naked on the footage and she freaks out. Then Jeff's dog alarm, that's great. Then Jeff has the hallucination that they're actual dogs, and then he goes to grab the gun. And then later on they find Erica's body naked, stiff in that closet. Then you have the scene when Kim goes to the store, and that's where you see the guy on the ground working on the machine still look up at her and say, I'm finished now. Like Rustin Parr. She has her confrontation with Peggy and flicks her name tag, Peggy, which Tristan, as the witch, does to her at the end and says, Kimmy. So I like how that comes back. And then Kim leaves. She's driving the van and she sees the 7 kids that Rustin Parr killed, and she has to swerve to get out of the way to not hit them. And she fucks up the front end of the van a bit, and she gets back and she tells that to Jeff. And then the next morning, I love how they look at the van and it's totaled, and they don't even know how she drove it back with the way that it looks. Then they all start seeing shit. Erica disappears and her clothes are just laying nice with the candles all around in the pentagram that she drew earlier. And I like how this is where the group delusion and hysteria comes into play. They could possibly all be, experiencing this together, and they're just going nuts and they're having group delusions because they're all seeing stuff, they're all hearing stuff. Earlier when they heard Tristan call Steven's name, Erica and Steven had that moment when they were seducing each other and they start making out, and then she claws open his chest. So they're all experiencing stuff. Kim with the Rustin Parr kids. But then Erica disappears and they end up calling her father, who's a minister that she mentioned earlier in the movie, to Tristan, I think. And they end up finding out that the minister had no kids. So this obviously freaks them out. But if you look at it from the hysteria point of view, they don't know this person, and they do say that. She could have just lied about her name. So she could have just gave some fake backstory. It doesn't mean that there's some paranormal stuff going on, but that certainly can spark or even fuel the fire of a group delusion, for sure. And then they get the call from Craven, and he says to turn the TV on, and the sheriff's on TV waving while he's on the phone with him. And this is how they find out about the tourists and the tour guides being murdered and butchered and arranged in the shape of a pentagram. And he's suspecting Jeff. What do you do at this point? Now you're being accused of murder. You can't go anywhere. And he says to them, you can't leave this town until I say so. Now you're stuck here. and you're being looked at for homicide. Jeff even says, and damn right, none of you are leaving me to hang for this, alone, and says, I'm not letting any of you out of my sight and all that. That's the right way to do it, because there's no way that all of this is getting pinned on him, even though he did do it. So I'm just saying, in like the way that he's thinking, because he doesn't know that he, did anything wrong yet. If you were innocent, absolutely. You're not all leaving me alone, like to take the fall for all of this? Absolutely not. But in reality, he did commit murder, so. I've always loved Jeff's line when they're freaking out and he's smoking a joint, and he says, you want to know what's going on here? It's Erica, or whoever the fuck she is. I've always loved the way he delivers that. One thing I gotta say is it's weird watching the theatrical cut for the first time in several years from always watching the fan edit. It's not a negative or anything, despite all the studio shit, because this is the version I've always watched for the majority of the last 25 years. I can't believe this movie's 25 years old. That's insane. And further to the point that I don't think we'll ever get a director's cut. At 25 years, I mean, unless Berlinger's got something planned for the second half of this year for a 25-year anniversary director's cut, I don't think we're ever going to get one. But it is noticeable, the difference in the fan edit and the theatrical cut. So if you haven't seen the fan edit, I'll put a link to it. It's a Google Drive link. I'll put it in the description, so if you want to check it out, because it really does enhance this movie. I don't know if it's going to enhance it much if you don't like this movie to begin with, but if you already love this film, or if you just enjoy it but you never got big into it, it might make you enjoy it more, seeing the fan edit and seeing all of the early interrogation scenes and the ones that keep being played more frequently here as we near the end. The murder sequences, all of that taken out, and there's actually a real book of shadows in the fan edit. There's an actual book that's shown instead of one of the cutaway scenes that shows the murders happening. So you actually get a book of shadows too. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave it in the description. One thing I've never been sure about is the files that Jeff has in his drawer that Kim finds. It's the same files that the police, have on all of them at the end of the movie. So, I mean, even if this was a group delusion, how would they see these files or have these files and it turns out being the exact files that the police have on them later? I don't know how that works. And even the witch, if she put the files in the drawer, the same ones that the police have, I mean, I don't know how any of that makes sense, but I love how everything starts changing around them and they're being fucked with. Like Jeff seeing the dogs, and this is where he finds Erica's body after putting the shotgun away. He hears Craven, and the bridge already collapsed, but now it's back up. But then they look on the TV again later, and it's collapsed again. All of that is really well done. We have the climax when Tristan comes in, when they're all arguing, and starts talking crazy, but she starts saying backwards. Everything's backwards. Erica's dancing backwards. So then Kim says, yeah, try putting the keystrokes in backwards, which I don't know how that makes sense, to do the commands backwards and then hit play and it works. And it shows them having like some weird sex orgy and then some occult stuff coming up, and then you have the cool shot of Erica naked, but she has the skull in between her legs. That's cool. Then you see Steve and fucking Kim and all this crazy stuff. They're destroying the cameras. Then Tristan, as the witch, ends up commanding them and saying go after they all have weapons. And they go and brutally murder the tourists, which, again, if we didn't have all the studio interference, this would be the first time you're seeing any of this, instead of seeing random splices of this throughout the entire movie, which ruined so much of it. And at the end of the footage, they show Tristan hiding the tapes. she must have left this one camera, right? With this filming everything? Because how did she hide this tape afterwards? She couldn't have. So everything else had to be hidden away. And this one tape was left here smashed on the ground, right? That's the only way I can make sense of it. And then cute callback to the original film where she brings the camera real close till it's like right up and you see her nose and shit, just like scary movie makes fun of, which I can never unsee that. And then they start chasing Tristan up the stairs. And such a great scene. She's, I don't know, possessed or taken over by the witch. Witch bitch, what Jeff says to her. And he's filming all of this. It makes it look like she is this crazy possessed person. And she ends up taunting Jeff with the noose around her neck. He says no and makes a jerk. It's like a reaction, like no to what she's saying. And he basically hangs her ass, though. I mean, let's be honest. But she ends up hanging to death. And then they get brought in for questioning and arrested by the police. They start showing the footage, the security cameras at the store, which show Kim stabbing Peggy with the, it looks like a nail file, right? And starts stabbing her in the neck, killed her, and that's not how it happened to her. Then you see Jeff moving Erica's body and hiding it in the closet. That's not how it happened. And then Steven, when he delivers his lines of somebody fucked with this tape, that's fucking bullshit. I love that. What a great ending to this movie. And they show that none of it happened from any of their point of views at the end. That he just shoved her off the balcony there and hung her and says, fucking witch, which is great too. This movie is so misunderstood, and that's the word I always use for this film. I really think it's truly misunderstood. And obviously, the studio interference had a lot to do with that, and expectations had a huge part in that also. But it's such a great movie. For me, I mean, I've always loved this film. It's a favorite of mine. I've watched this film more times than I can count. I can only pray that we get a director's cut one day, but as I said, it's not looking good 25 years after the release of this. But that's Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, revisited. 3-year anniversary of the channel. Again, thank you to everyone who's ever watched, every guest that I've been blessed to have on from the horror world and talk with. Thank you to everybody who's taken time to come on here, everyone I've collaborated with, friends, the whole community. Thank you, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great morning, afternoon, or night. I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.